Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Mindfulness for Beginners. I hope you're happy. I hope you're peaceful. It's a pleasure to practice with you again. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would invite you to share with your friends, leave a review, maybe say hello. The link to the Twitter account is in the description. So this is a longer episode, and it's one of the series of interviews. And in this one, I had a conversation with Kerri Cummings, and she's a psychologist who's based in Germany. She's also a coach, an author, a speaker, and she founded the Mindbar Mindfulness Center. Through that, she's helped a lot of people to live a calmer and happier life. And we had a great conversation about the benefits of mindfulness, some of the misconceptions that there are around mindfulness, which is very interesting, the difference that it's made to her and her clients' lives, and even how mindfulness can help to improve your putting game if you're a golfer or if someone you love is a golfer. So I started off by asking how Kerri got into mindfulness in the first place.
It was Kundalini yoga, and it has a lot of meditation in it. And I just got into that. Pretty much after that evening, I did yoga every day, and I actually eventually became a certified yoga teacher, also Kundalini yoga. And their meditation is more mantras. You speak mantras, and I really started to see a huge difference in just how I felt. Small things didn't bother me anymore. Just being in traffic, for example, driving in traffic, I just was more relaxed about the small stresses of life. And it almost sounds funny to me now to even remember me even getting upset at stuff like that, because I just don't anymore. It's really amazing, actually. So at the same time, I'm a psychologist, and I was through my research work in psychology, I was doing a meta-analysis on the effects of meditation on the brain, and the meta-analysis the results came out that it actually significantly increased the gray matter in the brain, meditation. It was a different types of meditation, but one that was very highly researched is mindfulness meditation. And so I kind of got interested in that because the results of it, scientifically speaking, were amazing. And so through my kind of science and research and interest in that, I got into, I kind of moved a little bit from the Kundalini meditation to mindfulness meditation. And now I'm doing my PhD also on mindfulness in trauma patients, people who have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm finding that it actually, the more mindful, even traumatized people are, the better they get through therapy, the more better results they have, so to speak. And so long story short, I moved kind of slowly into mindfulness meditation. I did an MBSR class, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and kind of learn the basics. And well, that took me on a path towards becoming a teacher myself. And so it kind of put me where I am today. That is, I practice mindfulness myself. I've been doing that for, I don't even know exactly when exactly I kind of switched to mindfulness meditation, but it's been many years now. And I teach it at the Mindbar.
That's great. It's funny you say about starting off with yoga, because that's exactly how I got into mindfulness as well. And I was chatting to someone else on the podcast, and that's how they got into mindfulness as well. So it's like yoga is a bit of a gateway drug into meditation and mindfulness, but it is true, because essentially, I mean, yoga is focusing 100% of your attention on the position that you've got in your body, and it's a very, very natural step from that into simply focusing your attention on your breath. So that makes sense to me. So you've been practicing for many years now.
Yeah.
I find personally that there's some parts of the practice that come more easily to me, and some are a bit more challenging. What are some of your kind of favorite ways to practice mindfulness?
As a teacher here, one of my, first of all, the sitting meditation is my favorite. There's all kinds of different exercises or practices you can do, like the body scan, also mindfulness yoga. I kind of hesitate to say yoga because it's really yoga. It's really a mindfulness focused on the body and movement. That's what I would call that. But it's, and then there's the kind of informal things you can do. And I have to say those are my, combined with the sitting meditation, the mindfulness meditation, would be the small things that you do throughout the day. For example, I do like a little mini body scan if I'm sitting at my desk. Sometimes I just kind of scan just literally a few seconds. I just feel my body. I become aware of my body sitting in the chair. I feel the ground, the floor under my feet. Sometimes I'll go outside and just stand and look up at the sky and just feel what's going on around me, just for a few moments. Also, the focus on the breath is something that you can do all throughout your day. I emphasize this a lot with my students because, there's a lot of challenges to formal practice, and I think things like just even in a meeting, in a full conference room, you can still practice mindfulness. You can kind of pull your attention inward for a few seconds, focus on a couple of breaths, in breath, out breath, and then you're kind of back to being centered. And we're focused on the external so much, especially if you're interacting with other people, and even more especially if there's a conflict, between people. It's easy to lose yourself, and that's where mindfulness for me I find extremely helpful. You can be in a conversation with someone and notice when you start to kind of lose yourself, so to speak. You're just fully concentrated on someone else, and you can easily just pull that attention towards yourself, center yourself, and then kind of have a back and forth of being still centered, but also being with the other person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That absolutely resonates with me, because it's actually one of the parts of the practice that I struggle with a little bit is that mindful listening, and either finding my attention is going to something that I'm anxious about, or sometimes I'm actually thinking of something clever or funny that I want to say that I'm just waiting to jump into the conversation with, and I'm not actually kind of giving my full attention to what the person's sharing with me. And the other thing that you said, which really resonated with me, was that just stopping what you're doing for a moment and being really aware of where your body's at, because what I've noticed from practicing for a few years now is whenever I'm driving, or say whenever I'm sitting at my desk at work, I'll just stop for a moment and I realize my hand is on the steering wheel, or I'm sitting on my chair at the moment, and just taking a few moments to breathe in and out it probably doesn't look the most productive time from the outside perspective, but it's such a great thing just to stop for a moment and just ground yourself back in the present moment as well. So I really appreciate what you're saying. So are there any parts of the practice that you have, that they're a bit more difficult for you, that you've struggled with a little bit, or maybe took more time to bed in?
Now, at this point in my development, I guess for myself, one thing is very simple: finding the time. I think that's a huge challenge. It's in my class is also one thing that we talk about a lot. How do I find the time? Luckily, I teach meditation very often, so and also, when you do teach meditation, do a guided meditation, you kind of have the added benefit of also being in a slightly meditative state. Maybe not quite as much as if you were just doing it yourself, but finding the time is. I have my own business here. I also work in a clinic and do psychotherapy with patients, trauma patients. I have 3 kids. I'm single mom. I'm really, really busy doing my PhD. But I think that's the biggest thing, is finding the time. And I personally have stopped trying to be perfectionistic about that and saying I have to do it in the morning. It has to be 20 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever. I do it when I spontaneously have the time, whenever that is. I do it in the parking in my car, when I'm waiting for my kid to finish tennis. I find the time, and you can find it. It's a challenge, though. I think that's the biggest challenge. You can sit on a park bench on your lunch break. Nobody cares if you're sitting there with your eyes closed. You can go at the office, go in the bathroom if you need to. If you have no other space to do it, go in the bathroom and in the stall and close the door. It's not the nicest place to do it, but you can do it. So I say be opportunistic instead of perfectionistic.
That's such good advice, because whenever I talk to people about practicing mindfulness, that's got to be the top thing or top argument against it that I hear, is that, well, I just don't have the time for it. And it's funny, there's a quote that I always use from Thich Nhat Hanh, which I think is actually adapted from someone else, but it's along the lines of, whenever you're not busy, you should practice at least 10 minutes a day. And when you're very busy, you should practice an hour a day.
Yeah.
And it's actually when our lives are incredibly busy, or when it's most important for us to bring ourselves back into the present moment.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that finding the time is, you have to be creative, but also using those small little mindfulness techniques, like turn off, when you get in the car, turn off the radio, turn it off, and just be with yourself. Just pausing for a moment, noticing your breath. Also, in conversation with others, I always say, you do not have to respond right away. You do not have to. A conversation is a back and forth thing, but you don't have to respond. You can pause. And it's amazing that people accept that. It's okay. These kind of small things, I think, are extremely valuable also, in addition to meditation.
That was something I noticed, actually, whenever I started going to Sangha in York, where I used to live. So for those new, it's Sangha is like a a mindfulness group where you go along and you practice together, you meditate together. And I'd be and kind of around the practice where we're all socializing a little bit, I'd be chatting to someone. And what you're kind of used to in a conversation is that there's a very, very fast back and forward. And I noticed with some of the people that I spoke to that, they would ask me how things are going. And I would tell them, okay, so the job's going like this and I'm doing this. And they would just sit there and nod. And there would be this quite long pause, which I found incredibly awkward at the start because, as an Irishman, Irish people are used to kind of back and forward very, very quickly. And to have a very slowed down conversation like that, where that person is really listening to what you're saying and not immediately coming back with something, was quite alien to me. But to know that somebody is really listening to, actually, when you get used to it, is a very valuable thing, a very comforting thing. And especially whenever you're talking to somebody who's suffering at the moment, is giving them the time and space, not to jump in to tell them what to do or tell them how to feel, but actually just giving them the space to talk is so incredibly important.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I personally believe, as a therapist, counselor, if you give them that space, they find their answers. We are all experts for ourselves, really. We have I'm not much like for being esoteric, but we have all of the answers within ourselves, and sometimes having that space to just speak, suddenly answers pop up. And like you said, we don't often give others that space. It's not out of selfishness, but it's out of, like you said, how you're just used to. It's just kind of normal to have a back and forth conversation. It's a great exercise to practice, just really listening.
Yeah. I try and do it as much as I can, although I frequently find myself slipping back into old practices, but it's worth just reminding yourself and actually going into a conversation. I'm going to give this person space to talk and really listen. I wanted to pick up on something else that you said as well, which is around perfectionism. And another pushback that I get from people is that, well, I tried to meditate, but I was having thoughts coming through, and I try to tell people is that that's perfectly normal and that's part of the process, and you have to accept the thoughts as they come through and actually sit with them for a moment. And it'll be just good to get your thoughts on, whenever you're doing the courses with people, do you hear that from people? Do they say, well, I'm trying to meditate, but I'm having all these thoughts, and what do you say to them?
Yes, very, very normal. Happens all the time, every single time almost. Especially when they're starting out. They usually think, I'm not doing this right. I can't do this. This isn't for me. I've heard that. This is just not for me. Because and then I ask why, and they say, well, I just have too many thoughts. And I ask them, how do you know that when you're meditating, how do you know that you have too many thoughts? And they say something like, oh, good question. I just noticed that I had gotten lost in a thought. And I say, well, what did you do after that? And they say, well, then I started focusing back on my breath. And I say, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Exactly what it is. And the way I see it is, I see it like going to the fitness center or the gym. I don't know how you guys call that. If you want to build muscle, first of all, you don't do it once a week. The only thing that you can get from going there once a week is sore muscles. You're just if you go once a week to the gym and you do a bunch of weights, lifting weights, you're just going to the next day have muscle pain, and that's it. You have to do it regularly. Secondly, within the exercise that you're doing, you have to do a lot of repetitions, right? So, I'm not much of a fitness person, but I do know that the more reps you do, the more results you're going to have. And I say, if you're in a meditation and you find yourself having to repeat the cycle over and over again, in other words, You're focusing on your breath, then you drift off and you're in your thoughts. And you bring your attention back to the breath. And you have to do that 1,000 times. Then you did a whole bunch of repetitions. You can see it as a positive thing. You're really, really practicing. And eventually it will reduce. But even I, after practicing mindfulness for so many years, meditation, I might have a day where my brain is just extremely active, and I just tell myself that's just brain activity.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't need to jump into the thoughts, into the content of the thoughts. I just notice, whoa, your brain's really active today.
And being okay with that. And it's funny you say, having 1,000 thoughts, that's how you learn to practice. That is literally exactly what I say to people whenever I'm facilitating a mindfulness group as well, is that during a 20-minute meditation, if you have 100 thoughts, 100 times you have to bring your attention back to your breath. That is literally the practice. That is a practice. And I actually believe that there isn't a single person walking the earth who could sit for 20 minutes and not have at least one thought come through their head. I don't believe the Dalai Lama can sit for 20 minutes without having a thought. I don't believe that Thich Nhat Hanh can sit for 20 minutes without having a thought. It's just human nature. And to be able to accept the thought, to sit with the thought, let the thought leave and bring your attention back to the breath, that is the practice.
Yeah, totally. And I have to say, I always say this too. There's about first of all, it's not about not having thoughts. It's about realizing that you have a lot of thoughts and not jumping into the rapid river of thoughts, just letting them be and not taking them so seriously. And I say, I think we have about 8 billion people in this world now, if I'm not mistaken. We can't be friends with all of those people. It's impossible. And we have, there's very controversy on how many thoughts we have in a day, but I've heard something like 60,000 per day. We cannot possibly pay attention to all those thoughts. We cannot possibly be friends with all of those thoughts. So what mindfulness is to me is putting us back in the driver's seat and saying, I can choose. I can decide which thoughts I pay attention to and which I don't. And not be upset about it, but just be like, okay, if it's hard without the video, but okay, you thought, I don't need to, you're not helpful to me. This one's helpful. You're not helpful. And just sorting them out and being okay with that. We have so many thoughts all day long, and even during sleep, when we're sleeping. It's not necessary to get caught up in the thoughts. We can choose. We can choose which thoughts are helpful to us and which aren't.
And it's a really interesting experiment for those people who feel that they have too many thoughts running through their head to do this. Is if you sit down and ask them to do a meditation of mind, where they're actually focusing 100% of their attention on their own mind and the thoughts that are going through their mind, what invariably happens is, so you talk to them afterwards and you say, well, how was that? And they said, well, my mind suddenly went blank. It's really interesting experiment to do with people, to show that actually by focusing your attention, actually the flow, it is possible for the flow of thoughts to slow down as well. And just I suppose just on that theme, you have practiced for many years, and you have taught innumerate people, a huge number of people. Just from your observations, what would you say are some of the benefits of practicing mindfulness to you, and what you've observed with other people, maybe the feedback you've got?
Yeah, I say, I'll maybe start with myself. Just what you were just saying, I think, I get that all the time. As soon as you said, let's observe your thoughts, the thoughts are suddenly not there. I hear that all the time. It's so interesting. And I think what that does, first of all, it helps concentration. So a lot of people come to me. I get a lot of business people coming to me, and businessmen especially come in and say, I can't concentrate for more than like 30 seconds. It's driving me crazy. I have too many the phone, emails, colleagues, and I've found myself, even when I don't get interrupted, I can't concentrate anymore. My brain has gotten used to all this multitasking, and that, I think that's one thing that I find for myself too, is you can focus better. More importantly, the practice of noticing your thoughts and really consciously steering your attention away or to your thoughts, or to your breath, or to sounds. It gives you, I think it's helped me make better decisions. I don't know if that sounds strange, but you have better, how do I say this? That you're like better judgment, because I'm not making a decision based on a knee-jerk kind of reaction or an emotional reaction. You know, we fall back into, when we're not aware and conscious of our true selves, and we're listening to all the thoughts in our heads and feelings, and we're not being aware of it, mindful, we tend to fall back into old patterns. You know, what those patterns are, I always say that's psychology. You know, why we evaluate things in a certain way, what opinion we have, what old patterns we have, patterns of behavior. That's doesn't matter in mindfulness. You know, our parents, how we grew up, our culture, our personality, past experiences, trauma, whatever. That's all psychology. The key is in mindfulness is knowing that that's just your thoughts. It's just thoughts, and we don't have to follow them. And I think that that practice has helped me just be more sovereign, and that knowing when I get into a stressful situation, whatever it is, I feel like I'm in control of how I see the situation, not necessarily in control of the situation, but knowing that it's okay gives me, automatically makes you kind of just relax in the stressful situation. You know, I'm calmer. I can tell you I'm way calmer than I used to be. Even if I could have somebody screaming at me, and I can be relatively calm in the situation and not react in a knee-jerk kind of way. I would certainly respond in some way, but it's an aware kind of response. So yeah, and I hear that a lot from people who have started out not having any experience, and then they start practicing mindfulness. They come back and say, I really feel calmer. I feel like, I've just heard this last week. This one woman said, I think with her kids, she has two kids, and they're kind of in puberty, and it's a little bit difficult. And she said, it just didn't bother me, something that was going on. She said, I just noticed things just don't bother me as much. And I hear that all the time. So it's not that, but on the other hand, it's not that you don't have any feelings anymore. Like, who wants to go through life just being neutral? It's not that we don't have feelings, but you can have a feeling. You can you can notice, like, oh, this is a stressful situation, whatever it is, and just not get carried away, and it won't ruin your whole day. Just put in simple terms. It's not, something bad can happen. You are allowed to be angry about it, sad about it, whatever. Feelings are fine, but it kind of it doesn't, put simply, it doesn't ruin your whole day.
Yeah, it's that metaphor of the second arrow, isn't it? That
Yes. Yeah.
we can have the difficult circumstances and the immediate impact on us, but how
Hmm.
we react to those feelings is within our gift. And it really resonated with me whenever you talked about judgment, because it might shock the people that are listening to this, but sometimes we Irish people can be a little bit reactive to things and can have something of a knee-jerk reaction. And that was definitely me, especially in stressful situations like being out in a crowd of people is something that I find stressful, and so therefore, whenever something within that context happens that triggers some emotions in me, that can bring a reaction,
Yeah.
a mindless reaction, and actually the practice has been hugely helpful in being able to take a step back and
Yeah.
realize. So if I'm in a crowd of people, I can take a step back and say, I'm feeling anxious right now, and it's okay, to feel anxious. I think the problem I had before, or the challenge I had before, was that I wasn't okay with the fact that I was feeling stressed. The fact that I was feeling stressed meant that it was time to hit the alarm, because things were really bad. And actually, it's okay to just sit and observe, to sit and spend some time with your anxiety or with your anger or with your sadness.
Yes, definitely. I'd like to add to that, because if you're in a crowd of people, I think it's really important to say that you can pause and notice your anxiety, and also, as you said, not get upset about being anxious or get even more fearful. You can pause and observe, and then you can still choose to leave the situation. I think a lot of people, I find a lot of beginners sometimes are confused about, are we supposed to just accept everything? Are we supposed to think everything's great all the time? And I say, no, you can still change a situation if you don't like it, but you're doing it not in a knee-jerk kind of way, but you're actually calmly choosing, okay, I feel anxious. I know that I don't like to be around crowds. You can either say, okay, it's all right, just stay there, or you can say, I'm going to go and give myself a break, and I'm going to leave the situation. If that's also fine. You can also defend yourself if somebody is really overstepping their boundary, right? Yelling, screaming, I don't know. You you can you can actually choose. You might need to choose to scream back. I'm not much of a screamer, but I'm just, as an extreme example. The thing is, when mindfulness, you choose consciously. You
Yeah.
say, what is the best way to deal with this situation? You might decide that that's the best way, but after the fact, you have a calm feeling because you chose to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's and that's the greatest gift that it's offered to me, is that you use the metaphor of the river of thoughts and emotions, is that and I kind of thought about it as a boiling sea. I felt myself adrift on a boiling sea of emotions that meant that I had no control. And mindfulness offers you a way to take a step back from that and realize that you're not your anger, you're not your sadness, and you're not your anxiety.
Yeah. And
So,
yeah.
sorry, do you want to add to that, Kerry?
I think that realizing that through the practice of mindfulness, also one added, I think, benefit or effect of practicing mindfulness is it increases your self-compassion.
Yeah.
You're automatically noticing that you're sad, that you're angry, that you're anxious, or whatever, and being with that and allowing yourself just to be with that increases your compassion for yourself, which is obviously the first step in feeling compassion, practicing compassion towards others. And I think that is a wonderful effect of mindfulness, is that you just feel more compassion for yourself and for others.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's changed in my life significantly. Is really feeling more compassionate towards other people, and actually being able to become more aware of other people's suffering
Mm-hmm.
and more understanding of people's circumstances. So you were talking about that person that was, screaming at you. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, maybe they've had a really difficult upbringing. Maybe they're having a
Yes.
terrible time at the moment. It's not necessarily that they're a terrible, terrible person, which is maybe where I would have went to before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Exactly. That's exactly the way I see others now. And that example was a made up example. I don't really have people screaming at me, but thank goodness. But if I did, that's exactly, it's not only you have the ability to just pause for a moment and realize that, okay, this person is really, it's just like you would do to yourself. Wow, I'm feeling lots of anxiety right now. I feel it in my chest. I notice that. How is it for me? You can observe, let's say, the angry person and say, wow, this person really feels angry right now. And just really observe it. And just by doing that, I find in any, whether it's an angry person or something else, you also giving that person space. And it's almost kind of like listening, you're just allowing for a moment at least the situation to be as it is, and giving it a little bit of space. And then what happens after that is, we don't know, but you choosing then. You're responding instead of reacting, as they say, right?
Absolutely. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your business and the services that you offer?
Yeah. Before I have to say my website is being, it's in German, but I'm getting it put into English now. So hopefully by next week or next couple of weeks it'll be in English too. Yeah. So having said that, I actually live in Germany. My practice is in Germany, but I'm American. Long story, but I live in Germany, and so a lot of my business I do here on location, which is in German most of the time, not always. I also do things online though, and most of that is done in English. I teach mindfulness classes. I do MBSR classes, the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction. I also do individual mindfulness trainings. I also train some athletes wanting to improve their game through mindfulness. Especially for me, I've kind of gotten a few golfers who had one who was qualifying for the British Open. I don't know if you're familiar with golf, but and he had this just so obviously very, very technically very, very good. He had this one issue with his putting game, and it was all a mental thing. And the mindfulness training really helped him improve that part of the game, because it was definitely a mindset kind of thing that was going on. I also do counseling and also coaching for individuals, but also groups in companies. I do workshops with groups, teaching mindfulness-based, I would say mindfulness-based stress reduction, but that's kind of like the 8-week thing. But I teach stress management through mindfulness within companies. So I have individuals. I do in a clinic psychotherapy, and in the Mindbar here I do online and in-person coaching and counseling, which sometimes classic, but everything that I do comes from a mindfulness-based approach. So even in my counseling, I'm definitely always using mindfulness to, to work on the topics that we're talking about. And I can see it before my eyes how effective it is in all kinds of settings. Yeah, and I also am working on online classes right now. That's going to be very soon. I also do speaking engagements on the subject. So far only in Germany, but we'll see where it leads. But yeah, what else? So as you can tell, a lot of different things.
You get a lot of different irons in the fire. So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll put the links to your business, and whenever your online classes are available, we'll put a link in the description to that as well as your social media. So if people are interested in getting in touch with Kerri, following Kerri on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, looking at what services are available, then just look into the description and it'll be all there.
Yeah, that's great. I also write a blog. It's called the Modern Day Mindful. I can add that link too, and write for different websites. Like, I don't know if you know Mind Valley, Finer Minds. That's a nice website for all kinds of subjects on positive living and lots of mindfulness, meditation. I write articles for them and also for UC Berkeley, Greater Good Science Center. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it's also a really nice online, and they also have an offline center over there where it's also positive psychology subjects, always with a scientific kind of background. So for the greater good. So you can find me on those spots too.
Well, that's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Kerri, and I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you. It's a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
No problem. May you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy and live a long life.